Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Dear participants, welcome to the 5th module of the 9th week. In the previous discussions, we have seen how the interactions between movie and literature are fraught with certain difficulties and challenges. For example, adaptation studies have always been obsessed with the fidelity debate. The pruning of the material, the pruning of the details which have been given in the novel are also a compulsory part of the filmmaking process, because the film has to look at the time constraints as well as also has to have certain creative leeway to accommodate certain imaginative changes. In any case, we find that history, literature and movies are corroborative and they enrich each other. As a case study today, we have taken up a particular movie, 12 Years a Slave, which is based on a slave memoir. This was first published in 1853. It is based on the memories of Solomon Northup. It is the story of this person who was a free black person but was sold after being kidnapped to the Deep South during the pre-war America. The movie was made in 2013. This movie has been selected because of the intersectionality possibilities of the issues of race and gender, and at the same time when we look at this storyline, we find that it also has a connectivity with the present day debates when we are looking at the issues related with various ethnicities and differences. The slave narratives are a part of the American history, and a history has to be remembered despite the fact that it had hidden certain horrible things. If we remember the past, if we learn from it, then the chances are there that our wisdom would allow us not to repeat them in the future. Slave narratives offer the possibility to speak to the oppressed people for themselves. This is important, as Spivak, the famous post-colonialist critic, has already told us repeatedly. An understanding of slave narratives are also important in today's context when we are looking at a multiracial presence throughout the world everywhere. We are looking at the differences based on ethnicity, race, gender, caste and creed, etc. And wherever these differences create difficulties, slave narratives work as a reminder. When the filmmakers wanted to translate this memoir into the medium of a film, they had several challenges before them. It was an autobiographical memoir. It was an autobiography which was 160 years old. So, was it possible to make it into a popular film version in the 21st century cinematic industry with its veritable warehouse of emotional and technical tricks and treats for the modern viewing audience? What would be the receptivity status of the movie in terms of its present day viewers? However, when the movie was released in 2013, audience simply adored it. They found it not only technically rich and capable of presenting the ideas basically intended by the narrator, but they also found it strangely moving and appealing. The main part was enacted by Ejiofor, who was in the lead role, and he was supported by several other great performances. And in general, we can say that the movie is true to the storyline factually as well as in spirit also. The technique can be seen in the beginning, particularly in the presentations of the settings and the lightings. The movie had to produce the scenes of antebellum South, and it also had to recreate the plantation life in Louisiana. The lingering shots of the plantations give us a glimpse of the field work that characterized the life of the slaves. Different types of props and symbols have also been used throughout the movie. For example, the symbol of the Bible has been used to promote slavery and also to explain to somehow to the slaves that they have to bear up with their existence. At the same time, we find that the props of ropes and whips and name tags have also been used repeatedly, not simply as props but also as symbols which reduce human beings or slaves to the property of the white owner. At the same time, the symbols of pen and paper have also been used to differentiate the status of Solomon from other slaves, because Solomon was an educated person, a person who was already free before being abducted and sold into slavery. Sunsets and seasonal changes suggest the passage of time. Lightning, as we see in the movie, has been very effectively used to suggest different moods and different levels of existence. Set over a period of 12 years, we find that the cinematography has been very beautifully done, and it can be seen in the very initial establishing shot of the movie. In this establishing shot, we find that the focus is on the group of slaves. The shot lingers on them as the plantation overseer passes instructions. The background of the sugarcane plantation brings us directly into the institution of slavery, and these images suggest the torture which the slaves had undergone. Instead of depicting them, we find that the movie has been able to show them directly. Different types of natural sceneries which have been described beautifully and evocatively in the movie also depict the passage of time, and at the same time they also suggest the contrast between the beauty of the nature and the atrocities which the slaves had to face in their life. The tones and the shadows of lights which have been used in the movie throughout suggest the contrast of two different life patterns which were being led simultaneously in the plantation. The facts of misery of the slave's life are contrasted with the lives of the slave owners. These darker tones and shadows dwell on the suffocating and congested life of the slaves. The slaves had shared dwellings. Men and women used to stay together with a minimum sustenance. They had a life of deprivation, and the cinematic images capture them in darker tones in a highly suggestive and evocative manner. The darker tones of these previous shots can be compared with this light shot of the palatial home and porch, which focuses on Mrs. App, the wife of the slave owner, and Platt, that was the name which was given to Solomon as a slave. So, we see that it is not only the light and the happy sounding tones which have been projected through this image, but also we find that the hierarchy of the status has also been pinpointed, because as mistress of the house, Mrs. Epps is towering over Platt, and we find that Platt is standing in a dejected manner, which shows that he is the property of her husband, and this existential difference is very well portrayed by a single shot here. So, we find that the use of wide, middle and close shots of slaves in the cotton fields as well as in the sugarcane fields is also very effective, as these shots portray the intensity of the labor, the hardships faced by the labor here, and also the fear of being whipped by the overseer is also palpable in the kinetic images which have been captured beautifully in the movie. In the close-ups also we find that the moments of fear, anger, pain, despair and hurt as well as dejection have been very vividly portrayed. Particularly we find that in the scene which has been captured in the middle of this slide, we find that a particular woman slave is being whipped. So, the pain and the sorrow, the despair, and at the same time acceptance of fate is written large on the face of this actress. At the same time, we find that in certain images, the use of the shallow focus has been done to highlight the atrocities on the one hand, and at the same time the contrast with the existence which goes on as if nothing is happening to certain individuals on the same plantation in a very vivid manner. In this particular scene, we find that Platt is struggling to remain alive as he has been left hanging from a tree from day to evening, but at the same time we find that the rest of the work is going on as if it is a daily occurring. In this shot also we find that the juxtaposition between Platt is struggling to remain alive while he has been left out hanging from a tree, and also the way the children are still playing in the background chills us to the depravity of human being. Similarly, in the second shot, we find that it is a repeat of the same whipping scene which we have discussed earlier. So, Patsy's whipping scene has also used shallow focus to focus on the brutality of the act. It blurs out the background to draw the audience into the scene which has no cuts, and this uncut sequence relies on extreme close-ups of the face of this actress as each whip lands on her back, creating pain, agony and distress. So, we see that photography as well as mise-en-scène has been used very effectively in this movie. As it is based on a slave memoir, it is a period movie which is based somewhere around 1840s and 1850s. It is the antebellum era which has been depicted by the movie. So, the costume designer Patricia Norris had a very tough task. She had undertaken an extensive research which included studying different type of artwork from this era to understand the patterns of the costumes which were used by slaves as well as by their masters. The paucity and a literal absence of photographs of these dresses was also a difficulty for Patricia Norris. So, she largely relied on books and etchings also. She had only 8 weeks to create the wardrobe, and then she also used the earth tone color palette, creating almost 1000 costumes for the film in such a short time. She also took samples of the earth from these 3 different plantations where the film had to be actually shot so that the earth tone matches the clothes. She also researched the temperature of each plantation to authentically portray minute details. So, we find that the dress as well as the architecture which has been depicted in the movie makes it to be a very effective representation of the memoir on which it is based. The misery of the slaves, the hardships of their status is communicated in a visual fashion with the help of not only the acting, but also with the help of the dress, the lights, the photographs, the sceneries which have been projected in the movie. The costumes which have been presented throughout the movie are the dirty, worn out, ill fitting tunics and pants which are characteristics of the slaves. It suggests that they have been clothed only that they can work. Functionality is the only key of their dress. In comparison to that, we find that the slave masters or the owners of the slaves are dressed in a very rich fashion. Slaves also used to wear tags which were engraved with the names of their masters, and they were treated as the property of their master. As a free man, Solomon used to wear the same kind of clothing as whites used to wear in his contemporary era. That was before he was kidnapped and sold. He used to wear 3-piece suit and hat as displayed in this still from the movie. So, costume are an indicator of the emotional and the psychological state of different people. Before he has been abducted and sold into slavery, we find that the rich texture of his clothes also suggests a happy life, and in contrast we find that the rags which he had to wear during his slavery also project the hardships of his life. The difference in the costumes can also be seen in these two contrasting pictures, one of Betsy who wears simple hand-me-down gowns and frocks, and the costumes of Mrs. F. So, we find that costumes have been very effectively used in this movie to capture the historical timeline depicted in the memoir and also to project the moods of different characters. In the movie, we find that the use of religion by the slaves as well as by the slave owners has been depicted in a very significant manner. In the memoir also we find that it plays a significant part, and this aspect has been kept intact in the movie version also. So, we find that Master Ford uses Bible to preach Christian values, to posit slavery as a benevolent institution, and at the same time we find that Master Epps uses Bible to assert his own superiority as the Lord and the Master. So, we find that the Bible has been used selectively to justify the cruelty on the slaves. Similarly, we find that in this over the shoulder shot between Platt and Mr. Bass, who is an abolitionist, we find that it suggests the deep concentration with which Mr. Bass is listening to the difficulties of Platt, and later on convinced by Platt's depiction, he also helps him to move out of the slavery later on. So, we can say that the film is generally faithful to Northup's memoir as a whole, even lifting some dialogue directly from the memoir. However, out of necessity we find that there are many portions of the memoir which have been cut out, and we find that there are various characters who have been left out as we have listed in these two slides, and at the same time we find that the identity has been changed, the number of people has been changed, and certain sequences have also been changed. But let us say that this was a compulsion to fit a detailed memoir into the small time available to the movie. Overall, we can say that it is a very satisfying movie because it does not take much liberty with the source material, and even though there is some pruning which is involved, we find that artistically it has been able to maintain the integrity and dignity of not only of the character, but also of the basic tone of all the slave memoirs. We had talked about the tie-in sales which exist between the release of a movie and the sales of the novel or the book on which the movie is based. In this case of 12 Years a Slave also we find that the tie-in sales were also enhanced. So, overall we can say that the adaptation of a literature piece, particularly a novel, into a movie has its own challenges, but ultimately if it has been able to do justice to the spirit of the novel, it can also recapture the appeal which the original novel when it published had towards its audience. However, being a very subjective assessment of the novel, we find that a lot still depends on the sensitivity of the filmmaker and also the sensitivities of the viewers. Thank you.